Do you ever go into a creative writing session, maybe going into the studio to write a new song, and then come out feeling like you haven't really accomplished anything? Maybe that's because you feel kind of scattered and unfocused. So as a musician, your ability to focus and be really, really productive is super critical to your success and being able to achieve your goals. When you have a regular 9-to-5 job, you can afford to maybe lose track of time, not get things done, be a little bit scattered because you're getting paid for your time and not your results. I mean, that's up to a point. You could always get fired from a job. But it's really different when you're self-employed and particularly when you're an artist. You are compensated only on your results. So your income, your security, your opportunities, and your status in the industry, everything that's important to your career, all hinges on your ability to focus and be productive. So let's talk about focus for a second. For me, focus has two elements to it. One of them is your depth of focus. Somebody might call it being in the zone or being in the flow state. So it's how deeply focused you are and engaged in your work. The other element of focus is how long you can sustain focus for, the length of time over which you can focus. You know, if you're going into a session trying to mix down one of your tracks, that's something that can take hours and hours and hours. And 5 minutes in, you feel like you need to take a break and go and check your email or hop on social media. That's not conducive to getting that task done very, very well at a high quality level. So you need to have both depth and length of focus to be able to be really effective. I've invested a lot of my time and energy into studying the area of focus and learning how the brain works so that I can be more productive in my work. My journey in my studies has taken me everywhere from doing a 2-year coaching program with Les Hewitt, the author of this book, The Power of Focus, all the way through to working with a Japanese Zen Buddhist monk who has a PhD in deeper states of consciousness. And what I want to do in this video is to distill down a lot of the core lessons that I've learned over my journey and pack those into some really punchy and effective techniques that can massively benefit you guys as musicians with your level of focus. So I'm going to hop into that. Just before I do, I want to let you know that I'm going to be quoting a lot of books and resources that I've used, and I'll drop those links right below the video for you. Also, I'll put links to my coaching programs if you're interested in working with me personally. All right, let's get into it. The first thing I want to share with you is that focus can be dramatically improved with training. We kind of naturally and intuitively get that if we want to get physically stronger and more fit, we can go to the gym and work out, and then the body responds by increasing its capacity. Yet we don't really think to do this for the mind. I don't know very many people at all that consider training their minds like they train their bodies. Yet this is emerging as a new field of study. If you look at organizations that are on the leading edge where peak performance and mental capacity is critical to their work, you'll see them using these techniques. A really good example of this is in the US military with the Navy SEALs in their elite DevGru unit, which is better known as SEAL Team 6. They've created what they call a mind gym, where these elite soldiers are using really leading edge mind training techniques to be able to increase their focus and their ability to enter the flow state. There's a really great book on this that I'm going to list below called Stealing Fire, which goes into that in a lot more detail. So why don't we take a page out of the books of these elite organizations and see what types of tools we can use to increase our focus as musicians. The first thing I'd like to share with you is removing interruptions and distractions. We live in this hyper-connected world where we have our smartphones on us 24/7. We have push notifications, text messages, emails that are constantly flowing into us. There's social media sites that we feel we need to stay connected to. The challenge with this is that every time one of these notifications comes in, or you go and check your email or a social media site, you leave that depth of focus that's required to do your best work, and you move into a state of interruption. The challenge with this is that these interruptions are coming at us at a pace that's so quickly, we never regain that level of focus. It takes on average 17 minutes to be able to refocus to the same deep state that's required to do your best work. So we're living in this state of what's called continuous partial attention, or shallow work, where we're operating at a surface layer and we're never really getting down to the depth of focus that we need to perform our best. We just talked about the Navy SEAL DevGru unit and what they're doing in their mind gym. One of the things that they've been doing that I think is really useful for us to take a look at is using sensory deprivation tanks to be able to learn new languages. As a Navy SEAL, it's really important to be able to speak the local language on pretty much every continent in the world. So they need to learn a ton of new languages. Normally, that takes someone 6 months to pick up a new language. But using sensory deprivation tanks and these enhanced mind training techniques, the DevGru unit is able to shrink that time down to 6 weeks, just 6 weeks. That's such a massive improvement. So I'm not suggesting that you put a sensory deprivation tank in your music studio, but there are some techniques and tips that I want to share with you that can be really useful. The most important thing is to not let phones in your studio. I have a no phones in my studio policy. The phones stay outside. And that's because smartphones are the most crazy tool for distracting yourself. If they're not beeping and buzzing with messages, just looking at a phone will take you out of the flow state because it'll remind you of these other things that you could be doing. So phones stay outside the studio. Now, what about computers? Because computers also have all these notifications that pop up. You've got push notifications, emails popping up. You need to disable that stuff for your music production sessions. Almost any computer is going to have a way of disabling that, and I just deal with that before I start writing music. Now, you also may want to find a way of eliminating your access to the internet, because that poses a really, really significant risk of distraction. You could be working on music and you think, oh, I'm just going to go to YouTube and I'm going to look up this quick tutorial on something. One of the tools that I use is an app called Freedom, which disables my internet access on my computer for a period of time. So I decide how long I'm going to be working on that session for. I load up Freedom, I type in that length of time, and even if I lose my motivation and my willpower and I go and I try and check Facebook, I literally can't. And something mentally just switches in my mind when I know Freedom's on. I just know it's not even an option. And so it kind of just frees up that little nagging thing in the back of my head that says, hey, I could go check Facebook right now. And finally, I wanted to talk about batching together the other administrative work that you need to do. So we all need to answer emails. We all need to go on social media to be able to promote your music, engage with your fans, to be able to get gigs and keep up with business communication. But if you're doing that every 15 or 20 minutes as you're trying to write music, then you're living in that state of continuous partial attention. So what I like to do is to batch that stuff together and just hit it for an hour or two, either before or after a creative writing session. So batch that stuff together, get it done, but don't let it kind of migrate or leak its way into your studio sessions. So getting into some form of mind training is going to be extremely beneficial for you. And the reason for that is you need to be able to build the willpower and the mental discipline to be able to resist distractions. Unfortunately, most of us are totally addicted to distractions and technology, like our phones. And it's not surprising because big companies like Instagram and Facebook and YouTube are using psychological manipulation techniques that are designed to get you addicted to the technology. A great example of that is this book, Hooked, How to Build Habit-Forming Products. And stuff like this actually makes me really angry because it's using manipulative techniques to be able to make these apps more addictive. So how do you get around that when multi-million, multi-billion dollar companies are using a lot of resources to be able to keep you addicted to their tech? My secret weapon and the antidote to this technology addiction and distraction addiction is meditation. I've been meditating now for about 15 years, and I've done a bunch of meditation retreats and training. And I'll say that it is probably, if not the most effective, one of the top most effective things that I've ever done, not only for my focus, but for my own personal sense of like peace and well-being. for my career as a musician. It's had wide sweeping impacts on my mental state and on my resilience and just on my creativity as a whole. Now, meditation, if we strip out all of the kind of spiritual and mysticism sides of it, is just mind training. It's like going to the gym for your mind. It builds that discipline. It builds that ability to focus. It builds that willpower that you need to be able to resist distractions. And it really warrants its own video. So I'm going to do some deeper exploration into meditation in some follow-up videos. But I just want to say that I highly encourage you guys to begin down the path of building a meditation practice. Here's a book that I really like, actually. Tools of Titans: The Tactics, Routines, and Habits of Billionaires, Icons, and World-Class Performers by Tim Ferriss. And in this book, Tim Ferriss interviews a variety of people: Wim Hof, Arnold Schwarzenegger, amazing performers, amazing celebrities, amazing athletes. And the concept of meditation comes up in a variety of these interviews. In particular, there's one interview I'll play a couple of excerpts from with Arnold Schwarzenegger, where he talks about using meditation as a way of building focus and handling stress and anxiety.
And I did 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes at night. And I saw the effect right away, that I was much more calm about all of the challenges that were facing me. I think that now I don't feel overwhelmed anymore. I take on one challenge at a time. And when I go and I study my script for a movie, I don't let anything else interfere in that, and I just concentrate on that. You have no chance of thinking or concentrating on anything else at that time but just that training that you do. And I'm today much calmer because of that, and much more organized and much more tranquil.
Next up, I wanted to suggest that you spend time planning your creative work before you go to work on music, and then to work on a single task at a time. Before I go into the studio for a session, I make some time first to sit down and plan my work and prioritize at a pretty granular level exactly what I want to be doing in that session. And that gives me a lot of clarity when I could otherwise be getting distracted. You know, if I don't plan my work, I could find myself after an hour in the studio realizing that I've just been compressing a snare drum and watching a YouTube tutorial for like an hour. Whereas when I plan my work, I might create a to-do list of micro goals like this. So say I'm working on a track where I've recorded a lead vocal. Task number 1 might be to do the timing and warping on that vocal. Task number 2 would be to tune that vocal in Melodyne. Task number 3 would be to do some manual volume rides to even out the dynamics of that vocal before I process it. The next task would be to process that vocal with effects like EQ, compression, de-essing, reverb, and delay, and so on. You get it. So when I go through and I might find myself getting a little bit lost or scattered, all I need to do is look back at that to-do list and realize, yes, this is the next task. So plan your work and work your plan in the studio. Part of doing deep and effective work is focusing on a single task at a time. We've seen countless research articles that prove how multitasking doesn't work, and I'm going to link one of the articles below. In particular, I want to point out a concept called attention residue, and this is why task switching costs you productivity. The basic concept is that when you switch from one task to the other, part of your attention stays stuck with the previous task, and it takes you a little while to be able to focus in with the intensity level that you need on the new task. So every time you switch between tasks, you're losing a little bit of productivity. Focusing on one single task at a time alleviates that as a risk and allows you to stay in a much more deep and focused state. So what I do is I have my task list open while I'm working on my project, and I just work methodically through that list. And that's part of having the discipline that's needed to be able to go through. Now, when you're talking about a business like a multinational corporation, they do this with their strategic plans. You can draw on some of that wisdom and how really effective organizations execute by bringing in some of these planning tools to your music. If you want to hack this process even further, I highly suggest an app called Vitamin R. It's loosely based on the Pomodoro method, but I find it much more effective and valuable. It allows you to break your session into what they call time slices, each one with a particular and specific objective. and then you have a structured break in between. So I'd create a time slice for each one of the items in my to-do list. You can adjust the length of each time slice and then set up the break interval in between. Vitamin R helps me to stay on task and reach each micro goal, and then it tracks my progress with this logbook. It's an amazing app that I've been using for years, and it really helps with complex projects with a lot of steps. I've dropped a link for it below in the description. Let's recap and summarize what we've just gone over. Your depth of focus and the length of time over which you can sustain your focus are going to be directly related to the results that you can achieve in your music career. You can train focus just like you can train your body by using mind training techniques. You can start doing that by taking a page out of the book from DevGuru SEAL Team 6 and reducing and eliminating as many distractions as possible in the studio. You can then get into using mind training techniques like meditation to be able to build your level of discipline and your level of willpower when it comes to resisting distractions. Then you can start to use planning techniques where you set micro goals for yourself and focus on one task at a time to avoid that attention residue issue. And finally, you can use creativity boosting apps like Vitamin R to be able to accelerate your progress. Awesome. I hope that these techniques are of great value to you guys and really assist you on your way to your goals with your music. If we haven't connected before, please subscribe and stay in touch. Feel free to hit me up in the comments because I'd love to chat with you there. And thank you so much for tuning in. I hope we connect again really soon. I'll catch you guys later. Focus.